G'day, Jason here from In Search of Australia. In this episode, I go to Black Springs and I'm going to do the fundamentals of fossicking here at the Vulcan State Forest and Campbell's River. As this is so close to Sydney, it's really worthwhile for people if they want to cut their teeth on fossicking for the first time. So back to the basics. Let's see how we go. Black Springs is essentially crossroads 15 minutes south of Oberon, that is surrounded by the Vulcan State Forest. The meat and potatoes of the area is forestry and farming. Attempts at mining gold and sapphire failed to produce a viable income and was abandoned. These days it tends to cater for recreational activities such as fossicking, fishing, mushrooming and hunting. The great thing about Black Springs is there's the Black Springs rest area right on the junction. This is a free campground that borders straight onto the Vulcan State Forest. Well, the part of the Vulcan State Forest that has the prospecting area at Sapphire Bend. Very tranquil and quite nice. There are plenty of facilities such as fire pits, flat ground, and as you can see, the picnic tables. There are also pit toilets, which have a potable water fountain outside it, so you've got that. If you don't like the pit toilets, straight across the road are the council toilets, which are normally plumbed. And when I went there, a free pair of very nice looking boots. So when we look at Black Springs in the MinView map, you'll see all the different types of deposits that have been recorded around here. So we have the Vulcan State Forest that borders on Campbell's River along here. There's a public fossicking area here, which to me was just a lot of moved earth with large chunks of quartz and things, but I dug down near the river on the public side and didn't find anything. Doesn't mean there's nothing there, it's just, it seemed a lot of work not to get one little speck. Further down in Campbell's River, you'll have a little spot here in the bend and along there for a stretch where there's no fence line, and that means that the river's sitting inside the state forest, so it's accessible to people. I have to point out at this point, if you go to Campbell's River here, you do need a fossicking licence. This being the junction of Black Springs, you'll notice a Vulcan State Forest here over to the right, and what these triangles indicate are sapphire and diamond. Now in here is the public prospecting area. It's sort of sitting in around this spot here. You can just go in without a license there to try for sapphire. You do get a speck of gold here and there, but don't rely on getting gold in this area. Most people, when they start fossicking, they'll come to Oberon and go to the information centre and get some gem sieves and a gold pan. I've got this longer handled shovel, and I suggest you do get one with a longer handle because it can be quite deep water at times. But this will be all I use. Now, one of the first elements of fossicking in a river is reading the river. You'll see that the river comes around a bend, flows down here, and across there is some bedrock that's sort of becoming like a bit of a dam. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look in that area and over there. And the telltale sign is, if you look at the bubbles over there, they're sort of swirling around in a circle. So what's happening there is it's a bit of a vortex of water, and this causes heavies to drop off in that little spot there. The other reason they might drop off over here is they've just made it over that rock dam and the water pressure's dropped. So you'll see that the flow there is not as strong as coming across here. So there's my two spots. Another spot is just here. You'll notice there's rapids, but then again, if you watch those bubbles, they tend to stay in the one spot. And that means things have been stopped just after that bit of bedrock there that it's exposed. So what you do is you have your pan, your 1/8 inch, so that's the smaller grill, and then your 1/4 inch pan on top. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get my material, put it straight in the top here, and then I'll sift it in a moment. Where I'm going to get it from is just behind me. So if you remember, I said there's this rock wall here, the exposed bedrock just next to the rapids. I dig down in front of it. I get my material, and the key thing here is this grey looking material. It's just above the clay, so there's still little bits and pieces of rocks in there. You don't want the silty clay itself. Gold and gems don't tend to pierce through that or penetrate it. So I now put this in, and I'm going to get a little bit more. Let's see what we get there. This is really just a test. So I'm going to immerse the whole lot in the creek, holding the pan to the sieves, agitate it. You may even push around with your hands because sometimes there's clay that needs to be broken up. Good to take the big rocks out. Sometimes you can get quartz with gold in it, but I can't see anything obvious there. Now you'll see that I've taken the pans out, the sieves out, without the pan. Everything's heavy in there, it's not going to leave the pan. Anything drifting out is too light. So now what we're going to do is, just below the surface of the water, agitate the sieves like so. And you'll see that a line's created. Turn it around, create the line again. And you can do this a few times. What you're doing is you're moving all the heavy material to the centre and categorising it by putting it in there. When you want to check it, just below the surface of the water, tap straight down. I'll put that aside for now. Then you do it to the smaller one. And they're ready to check. To keep the gold pan, because one, it's really good for indicators, but there's also gold here, so you don't want the gold to just go straight to the sieve. So the very first thing you want to do is agitate this as much as possible to stratify it. So what that means is we're moving all the heavies down to the bottom. And this can be quite vigorous. Anything that's heavy isn't going to flick out. Okay, once you've done that, you're going to slightly tilt your pan like so and agitate again. Now I've got these really big riffles here, and then smaller riffles there. I'm going to start with the bigger riffles. So while it's at the angle, side to side motion. Let all the top material drift out, and then what you can do is stick the pan in the water, let it take that top layer. Now the good thing with gemstone regions is you'll see things like zircon or even the gemstones themselves starting to show up, so that's a good time to stop. If you see black sand, so a lot of really dark black sand, stop then as well, because you're getting close to losing the valuables. Because there's not much sun at the moment, I'm inspecting a little closer each time. Now one of the things with a pan and gems have a higher surface area usually than the gold. They're also not as heavy, so water will push them around a lot quicker. So you do have to be a little more careful. I'm starting to see spinel all around here, so I'm getting close. Now what I can do, it's probably a little early, but you can agitate with a little bit of water in there. Just have enough to make it move, and then you just do a whack like that. What that does is it pushes all the light material off. Didn't push as much as I wanted, but then you just bring your water back and tap. And I can see flakes of gold there. I'll come back for that. And I can see a little zircon there. Zircon there. So there's a test pan that tells me that this little spot down here, next to the rapids, is still quite good. So here's the gold that I got just from that little bit of exposed bedrock next to the rapids. And then if I bring it over here, there's some zircon. There's another little one there. There's a few around. So it tells me that I'm in the right spot. So the next thing to do is actually turn the pan. Even create a gravel bed, but something like that. Don't go straight onto rock, it'll just bounce everywhere. What you want to do is sort of make it like a pancake where you flipped, keeping everything in the same position. So two hands like that and straight down. I felt mine rattle around a bit, so it wasn't the best flip. But what you'll find if there is anything there, it's all in the center. So let's try this smaller pan. That worked better. And I can see spinel and ironstone. So if you get a lot of little black rocks in the middle, you're on the right track. Now I don't have enough sun here at the moment to be certain. So what I'm going to do is I'll go through, pull out the obvious ones, and then go back, grab that core, and do it again. Now, a good practice is when you do find your gold, do take it out of the pan. An essential item is a snuffer bottle. So how this works is you squeeze it in and it creates suction to suck the gold up into the chamber. So I'm going to get this. When you've got the gold in the snuffer bottle, shake it around a bit, get it into the corner, because you do have to push the water back out the spout, and we want to make sure that the gold's right there in the bottom. The other essential item is a container like this for your gemstones and a pair of tweezers. So we've got the river over there, probably rushes over this point, and we'll check there soon, but also rushes over here and drops off, and this is where we're getting that circulation of bubbles. There's some larger rocks here which I'm just going to move out of the way, so you can see I've moved some over here to reveal the gravel. You can sort of hear it a little bit. Yeah, there's the gravel that I'll put into the pan. So I'll move some rocks and then fill the pan. Now, as you can see, this is much better. Getting more of that black spinel, and I can see 2 zircon, quite sizable ones just here. There. And there. And as you can see, they're sitting smack bang in the middle, with what we call our indicator rocks. Some people do collect the zircon. Sorry, not the zircon, I should say the spinel. As you can see, this is a bit better, this sieve. There's black indicators, which is usually ironstone and spinel. Spinel's a black crystal, it's opaque, and ironstone's an iron-rich rock, they're usually round. But what you'll see here is there's a large zircon just there, and another one sort of just lodged down there. So not bad. Can't see any sapphire yet, but they're sizable gemstones, and they do indicate that sapphire could be right here. Just to reinforce the reason for the pan, this gold's actually quite chunky. Usually you get much finer gold. And again, more zircon. Still haven't spotted a sapphire, but I'll collect that gold. And there's our first sapphire. And a nice bit of either garnet or zircon. I think when it gets to that colour, it's actually harder to tell which one it is. Now the reason I use the tweezers is if you use your fingers, you can sort of push the gemstones down deeper and it gets harder to find them. So do bring tweezers. And make sure your bottle's somewhere easy to get to. There we go. So I'll put that in there. I think I ended up with an extra rock, but that's okay. And get that one. Oop. You can see why I mean. There we go. It's a nice colour, that one. And now you can see I've got sapphire. Ended up with 2 extra rocks in there, but I'll take those out. Let's try and get the light on it. There we go. You can see the blue through it. Best way to determine sapphire from spinel is hold it up to the light and look in the sharper edges. Sometimes sapphire can be very, very deep blue, and spinel can be mistaken for sapphire, and sapphire can be mistaken for spinel. If in doubt, take it home, put it under as much light as possible from different angles, and you'll be able to determine it then. But look for those little tiny corners that light will get through. Another thing from experience, do put your lids back on. Things like this can often get kicked over and you lose them. I tend to try not to go back here, just in case when this washed forward it reveals heavies there. Generally they should be in the corner, but I used to be a bit cautious. So just there was a gemstone. I'm going to stop. I'm surprised this one didn't go in the top sieve. That's huge. Very nice. You can see another one there. Another one there. So as I showed before, I've been digging behind here, but what I discovered was it actually goes in underneath, and that's where I got that large zircon from. It's just here. It's sort of a crevice, I guess, but really what it is 2 bits of bedrock folded over each other that's gathering things underneath it. So I put the shovel right in under there. Found a friend. Let's let him back in. I'm sure he doesn't want to be shoveled away. There he goes. Although the gold pan will very rarely, if ever, have gemstones worth keeping, it is a great indicator. So there's a tiny sapphire and some zircon. It just helps you know that you're in the right spot. Here's a bit of a summary of what you need to look for. You need to only go for the grey clay. Now, I don't mean the silt, where it's like literal clay, but this mixture of grey clay and gravel. This is what you need to dig up. If you're digging up sort of quartzy, brownish gravel, move on or go deeper. Look for indicator rocks, black spinel and ironstone. They should be in the centre of your sieving. If you're seeing those and there's sapphire or zircon in the area, you're in the right spot. Read the river. There's a boulder over there that sort of created a wall that could be a potential spot to go. So downriver from that boulder's a spot. As we saw, downriver from this exposed bedrock worked, and downriver from this exposed bedrock here and underneath it worked as well. Other spots that I could consider is down behind this boulder here, that's obviously a bit of bedrock that's fallen down, and you may even find crevices and things that you could look into as well. Another final tip is to take this entire core like that and re-sieve it. It's very easy to miss stuff. Normally I'd use a trowel, but I should be able to get most of it. And here's the reason we re-sieve what we had. There's a zircon that was missed. I'll have to check the rest. But as I zoom out, you'll see that there's this line of dark rocks. So everything's being brought to the center there. Sapphire Bend at the Vulcan State Forest holds a special place to me. It's where I made my very first video, and it is also where I really did start to understand how to find the sapphires. I visited here numerous times and have had many amazing experiences. One of those was once when I came here, I heard this sound which I would have assumed was like a yowie or Bigfoot, and it ended up being a buck telling the other deer that I was in the area and warning them off. If you go to the public prospecting area, you'll find that it's like a warren of wombat holes, or I should say human wombats, and it's been really done over, but you can certainly find sapphires here. In fact, I've been very successful here. I've moved on from the Campbell's River to the Vulcan State Forest. I'm not at the public prospecting place this time. Reason being, I feel it's done over a lot and it's actually harder work. It's very concrete like gravel there. When you go further afield, you do need a fossicking license to be able to fossick in these areas. So the easiest way of actually getting to the sapphires in the Vulcan State Forest is to find where someone's already been digging. Just saves you time getting down to it. So I found this hole. This is not at the public prospecting place, but this is where you start, and you'll notice I've got a shovel and 2 buckets. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get to the gravel, shovel it into the buckets, and then take it to a water source to sieve. So the trick to finding the sapphires here is knowing where the clay layer is. So you can see there's this yellow clay. This is not what we want. But you hear there, it's like solid rock, but it's actually gravel. This is the layer that we want. This is where the sapphires have sat. It's like an old riverbed. Firstly, I want to thank the couple that retrieved my glove when I was at Campbell's River. I really do need it for this spade because this is starting to splinter. I found it, so I'm making it my lucky spade. I don't use a shovel, I use a spade because of the pointed end, and the length helps a lot too for leverage. It has been that I needed crowbars and a mallet to actually get into some of the gravel at times. So this seems to be a little softer, and this should be okay. You want to hear that lovely crunchy gravel sound. Crunchy gravel. I've now filled the buckets. It's very tiring work. Do try to keep moving forward and digging down more than sideways, just so that you don't have to lever and bend over as much. But now it's time to sieve. So just down the road from the public prospecting area, there's this dam. This is probably the best water source for sieving. The basic equipment here is a trowel, the 2 buckets of gravel, gem sieves, and I do have a gold pan underneath. So the Vulcan State Forest isn't renowned for gold, but I have picked up a speck or 2 when I've gone for the sapphires here. I'm not really going to concentrate on that, but I'm going to see if I see one speck just to show that it does exist. The pan is also good for indicators when you get those tiny little pieces of gem. So I'll use it a little bit, but then I'll discard it from there on. So the hardest part of this is actually washing this gravel. It is quite sticky clay, so you do have to give it quite a good scratch around in the sieve. And one of the differences here is it's not as pleasant. It's always nice to be by a river and with the sound of the river. I mean, we've got some frogs, but it feels more like mining here. So there's the speck of gold right in the middle of the screen. And sapphire and a zircon. So these are good indicators. I'm really not going to concentrate on the gold, to be honest, but it's a good start. So my punter trying elsewhere only paid off with 1 sapphire. So the clean up from Campbell's River showed there's quite a lot of gold there, considering really I wouldn't have even gone through a full bucket of material ultimately. Probably at best would be 1 bucket, and I think in this case the gold outstripped the gemstones. Normally I get a lot more gemstones and larger ones. So I'm using a light box to try and show the gemstones. It doesn't seem quite bright enough, but what I have here is the zircon that I got at Campbell's River. So there's quite a few there. And there's the sapphire. So you can see some of the colour through it. I also got that devil's dice there, little cube. Now to give you a bit of a contrast though, my exploits at Campbell's River has resulted in all of these. And this is quite a large sapphire here. So it's a very prolific area. I highly recommend it if you're after those larger gemstones. You can see some of the colours there. Then at Vulcan State Forest, sort of off from Sapphire Bend, I got some nice quartz points. I sort of kept them just because they were well formed, and that 1 sapphire. However, normally I get a lot more. So what we've got over here is all the sapphire I've got from Vulcan State Forest and all the zircon. So I hope you enjoyed this how-to episode, particularly in that area, and hope to see you in the next one.